Hi, I'm Michael Eliason, and I'm here on behalf of Western Sales to talk to you about the S700 series of John Deere combines. We're going to start at the front corner of this combine, where we find our reverser gear case. The reverser gear case is used to remove any plugs from the feed accelerator system at the back of the feeder house. Just like in the past, we use an HD 460 synthetic gear oil. When we're checking our levels on this gear case, we're going to use our dipstick, which is located at the top of the gear case. There's been a change on this design from in the past, where now we have a T-fitting with a hose coming off of it that comes to the back here to work as our breather. Just like in the past, though, when we want to check our levels, we got to make sure that our feeder house is at the correct height from the ground. So make sure you have the correct height. Please reference your operator's manual for the measurement to have your feeder house up from the ground. We're still using our single point coupler that we've used in the past. We still have our black cap that we have on there to seal it and keep it clean. Whenever you're connecting your header to your combine, make sure that both halves of the coupler are clean so that we're not forcing dirt inside of our couplers and cutting our O-rings. We still have our 31-pin electrical connector that we're used to from the past. Just like before, we want to make sure that we're inspecting these terminals periodically to make sure that they're not being damaged or pushed back and that we're getting a good connection between the header side and the combine side with these connections. When we go to connect the header, we're going to make sure we put our plate on there and we have our lock on the right-hand side still. And we have to pull out, and then we can use our handle to pull down and engage the couplers together. As we pull this down, it's going to be extending our pins on the bottom of our feeder house that's going to be engaging our header. This is going to lock our header onto our feeder house. When it's time to remove the header, again, we have to release the lock on the right-hand side, and then we can push back on the handle, which is going to release our plate and retract our pins. If we're finding that our handle is very tough to move, it's probably that our pins are not aligned properly on our feeder house plate. And if we keep forcing it, we're going to wreck our shear pin up here. If we do that, there is some spare shear pins on the back side of our coupler. But just make sure that it's moving freely before you try and pull it down on it too hard. You will see with model year 20 combines that some of them are going to have a difference in this connector. With our new slate of headers coming out in model year 21, we're using a different style electrical connector here that's going to enable different connections into our headers and utilize the electrical control units that are going to be on the headers to give us more information and better tracking of hours with our headers. Moving down from our coupler, we come to our feeder house drive belt that we're used to from the past as well. No real change there. We still have our spring tensioner system, and it's same as before, has the notch in the gauge, and we're going to make sure that when we tension that spring tensioner, we have our washer into that notch. On the left-hand side of our combine, we have our primary countershaft gear case. This one also uses the HD 460 gear oil and has a dipstick located at the very top here. You access this dipstick from on the cab ladder landing and through the door to the right of your cab door. On our primary countershaft gear case, we also have our electric clutch that engages and disengages our header. Because it is an electric clutch, we would like you to be at low engine throttle when you're engaging this clutch. Coming back, we come to our unloading auger gear case. On the Class 8 and Class 9 combines, we have this grease for life design. You can see it's sealed at the bottom and you can't access it. On Class 7 and smaller combines, we have our traditional gear case that has the open gears and has a grease point in there that you have to get at every 400 hours. On either side of our gear case, we have doors that open up for cleaning out inside of there. We also have a third one on the back side of the gear case. These are for cleaning out between crops or at the end of season to prevent rust and corrosion from building up inside of that area. Looking at our drive for our gear case, you can see it's still the chain drive with a spring tensioner that we've used in the past. And we also still have our grease points located right here for greasing on the turret point of our unloading auger. In 2020, there's been a change to the design of that turret so that our unloading auger is going to be at a higher height compared to previous model years, no matter which length of unloading auger we're using. We've continued using our active concave isolation system that was introduced in the 600 series of combines. We've also continued using our round bar, small wire, and large wire concaves made by John Deere. Starting in 2020, John Deere has partnered with Condex to offer a factory or field installed concave option for a half-width style concave. They have a similar design to our round bar and our small wire concaves, and they are called Max Thresh and Max Round. The biggest difference is that these concaves' total size is half that of a regular concave. So you would need 2 Condex concaves to replace 1 regular John Deere concave. John Deere has used a front chaffer for many years, and we've offered an adjustable front chaffer for a couple of years as an aftermarket product. Starting in 2018, we offered the ability to have a factory installed adjustable front chaffer, which gives you the ability to have a better job of cleaning in your shoe. John Deere has always had a toolbox as part of the combine located behind this door. Starting in 2019, John Deere has started offering an optional large tool cabinet that has a locking door on it. It's a 4.1 cubic foot tool cabinet that actually replaces this door and covers the majority of this step, just to give you an idea of how large it is. With the introduction of the final Tier 4 motors that John Deere has been using since 2015, we also introduced this air filter assembly on the left-hand side of the combine. This air filter assembly filters the air that is used to cool our exhaust system and is used to make sure that there's no debris added into the exhaust area. It's very important that you keep this filter clean. Also located here, you can see that we have 3 shear bolts. These shear bolts are used on the drive for our unloading auger. On the left-hand side of the combine, we still utilize our row of switches that are in line with our rear tire. Just like in the past, they include 2 light switches, the chopper raise lower, and manual adjustments for your chaffer and sieve. And if you have the air compressor equipped on your combine, you also have an outlet that you can connect into with the hose for blowing off everything in the back end of your combine. As in the past, we have an adjustable stationary knife bank that can be moved into or out of the chopper to give you a difference in your cuts. Starting in 2020, John Deere has introduced the ability to adjust this remotely from the cab. Instead of having our manual adjustments, we will have an electric motor that moves the knife bank further in or further out, depending on what you're wanting to achieve with your cuts. This makes it easier for you to adjust your depth of cuts throughout the day to give you a more efficient use of your power. The same as our 600 series, we have our 2-speed gear case on our chopper drive. Just like before, we have our T-handle located in here that we move to change between the different speeds or to go to neutral. To put it into neutral, you push the handle in to the middle position, and then we're going to be in neutral, which is what we use for dropping straw at the same time as raising our chopper. If we push it in fully, we get into slow speed or high torque for tougher chopping actions, such as with corn. To take it back into high speed, pull it all the way out, which is where we're going to run it primarily. Starting in 2019, John Deere has enabled us to be able to do a remote view and adjust of our 5 main combine settings through the My Operations app. These 5 main settings are your concave clearance, your rotor speed, your cleaning fan speed, your chaffer clearance, and your sieve clearance. With this app, we are able to see what the combine is set to and recommend suggestions to the operator from your phone or tablet that will show up on your combine display. And if you accept them, it'll change your combine settings to these recommended settings. This is especially useful for when you're first starting out in the field and you have someone out with a drop pan double checking what your losses are, and they can make adjustments from the ground based on what they are seeing while you continue combining. John Deere has offered a number of tailboards over the years, from the standard tailboard to the PowerCast to what we see here, which is the advanced PowerCast, which enables us to drop straw from the back of the rotor while also spreading the chaff that comes off the back of the chaffer. As part of our PowerCast and advanced PowerCast tailboards, we're able to compensate for wind coming from the side by adjusting the speed of each of our spinners per side. In the past, when you turned at the headland, you had to hit a button to reverse which speed each spinner was turning at. Now, starting in 2020, we have what's called auto swap, where the combine is going to use your GPS to understand when you're turning at your headland and automatically adjust your speeds for you if you already are using the wind compensation. Service and maintenance in this area has not changed since the 600 series of combines. If you have any questions, please contact the Customer Support Center for more information. With the introduction of the 700 series of combine, John Deere also introduced its Combine Advisor package. Combine Advisor uses a suite of technologies to do both automation and optimization of the combine. This was introduced in 2018. Combine Advisor uses a combination of old technologies and new ones. Some of the old ones included are things like Harvest Smarts, Vision Track, and your interactive combine adjust. New features are our Activision cameras and Auto Maintain, which rely on the Activision cameras. Our Activision cameras are located on our clean grain and tailings elevators, and they provide a feed into your display to give you a live view of what is happening in each of these elevators. These cameras can be accessed by opening up this latch and then opening up this hinge. And our camera is in this box and has a lens that peers into our sensor here. With these cameras, they require minimal maintenance. Essentially, what it comes down to is if they're dirty, they need to be cleaned out a little bit. When you're done, just latch it up again, and away you go. There's a slight difference on your tailings elevator, however. With this one, because of the location of our rear door, we all have to make sure that when we open this, we just go a little bit, slide it down on its hinge, and then open it up. And when we go to put it back in, same thing. Push it up. Once you're past the door, make sure that you're into the groove for the camera, and then close it. Our Activision camera is pointing into our moisture sensor on our clean grain elevator. You'll notice that it's the same kind of a moisture sensor look as what we had on the 600 series. We still have two pins that we can pull out and an auger that gets removed. And when we put it back in, it's the exact same as it was on the 600 series, where there's a shaft on the inside that must go into the middle of our auger. And when we put it back into place by turning the bottom of the auger until it slides into place. And then when it does, we're able to put our pins back in. If you get a gap like you see here, you have to remove the auger a little bit, give it a little bit of a turn, and try it again. Once you have it seated, your pins will go in easily. In 2018 and 2019, the moisture sensor is the same as it was on the 600 series combine. In 2020, we've moved to a John Deere designed no calibration moisture sensor. When you look at it, it looks the same other than this section right here. Instead of the black box that we had previously, we now have this silver box. When it comes to our tailings elevator, we have the same kind of a setup with the augers as we have on our clean grain elevator, and the maintenance is the same. Again, you'll pull out your auger system, clean it up, and put it back into place with your pins to secure it there. Starting in 2020, John Deere has introduced a tool-free grain tank cross auger cleanouts on the right-hand side. You can see them here. With these, you turn this latch by hand, a door will open up, and you're able to clean out the right-hand side of the cross augers better than you were in the past. This is especially useful for crops that are harder to clean out, or if you are a seed producer. When it comes to your belt tensioning and greasing in this area, there's no changes from the 600 series of combines that you're used to. Just like in the 600 series of combines, we still have our feed accelerator at the rear of the feeder house that has a 2-speed drive. And it is still a belt drive, just like we're used to in the past. So just like before, if we need to adjust our speed, release our tensioner, move our belt over to the second set of shifts, and then put your tensioner back in place. And just like before, you want to match your speed on your feed accelerator to match that of your rotor. So high speed and low speed to low speed. And just like before, we have our decal located right here that enables us to be able to better tell which is high and which is low speed. On the right-hand side of our feeder house, we still have our drive chain that uses our same tensioning system as before. Just like in the past, it's going to be very important to make sure that your chain is tensioned properly, because when we reverse our feeder house, the tension and slack side of this chain will switch. And if it's not tight, the slack side will start slapping against the chain guide that's located below it and can damage the chain guide. Make sure that you're keeping this chain properly tensioned. Located behind the chain, you can see our spring tensioner for our feeder chain. Again, there's two of these, one on the left-hand side, one on the right-hand side. Just like in the past, we want to make sure that when we're tensioning this one, we go a little bit tighter than we do on our regular chain tensioners, and we put our nut side of our washer to the bottom side of our notch in our guide. Whereas most chain tensioners, we're putting the washer into the notch. As always, it is important to make sure that we're using our stone trap. We still have our locking pin on here to make sure that our stone trap can't open unless we want it to. Once we pull our pin out, we can open our door and clean out any debris or stones that are in this area that have built up. We strongly recommend that you clean out this area at least every day, and a couple times a day is better. Once you have it cleaned out, close your door again, make sure it latches fully, and put your pin into place to secure it to make sure it can't accidentally open. With our final Tier 4 engines, we also use DEF fluid to keep our emissions in check. This is our DEF fluid tank, and our pump has been repositioned to above the tank from where it was on the bottom of the tank in the previous series. We do still have a filter located in our pump. John Deere recommends a 2,000-hour service interval on that filter. I'm recommending that you change that filter on an annual basis to help prevent any issues. For maintenance in our engine area, just like on previous models, we have to make sure that we keep our rad and coolers clean. To access them, we open two latches right here. Once we have our door swung open, we have full access to our radiator and our coolers. Each of these is on framework that are able to be pivoted open so that we can get in there and clean things out more completely. Once we're finished, we have to make sure that we close our door and seal it to prevent any debris getting in past our rotary screen and plugging up our engine air filter. While you're in this area, make sure to keep an eye on your coolant level by looking through here at your surge tank. It has levels for if the coolant is hot or cold, so you can make sure you're checking it no matter what time of day it is. If you're equipped with an air compressor, you have your secondary position here where you can connect in your hose, which you can use for cleaning out your radiator and coolers. Beside there, we have our engine air filter. Engine air filters need to be checked on a regular basis to make sure that they're getting full airflow through them and that they have not failed. To inspect them, remove the outer filter element and take a look at the inner element. If you see any dust or debris on that inner element, the outer element has failed and both must be replaced. In your engine area, if you need to access the top of the engine, you need to raise this handrail. It has a lock at the bottom of it that locks it into either the down position or the raised position. It is important when you're done to be able to put the handrail back down, as if you don't, your engine fan will blow these doors open and you will not get proper cooling. To get access to your fuel filters and engine oil filters, you have to raise your ladder here and then open this door. Once you have done so, you can see that we have access to both sets of filters. We also have access to our oil dipstick through our oil fill tube, which is the yellow handle there. You can also see that we have our block heater cord sitting just to the left of our fuel filters. Also accessed in this area is the dipstick for our main engine gear case, which is located directly in front of our hydraulic reservoir. Hydraulic reservoir has a sight gauge on the front of it. Whenever you're checking your hydraulic oil levels, make sure that your feeder house is lowered, your unloading auger is in, and if your combine is equipped with the power folding hoppers, make sure that they are closed. Another part of the Combine Advisor package is active yield. You can see that we have 3 sensors in our hopper with these silver discs. Active yield is a system that measures the weight of grain in your hopper and makes a theoretical model of the pile as you're combining. Active yield will automatically calibrate your yield sensor for you as you're combining your crop, so long as you're doing one of 5 crops: barley, canola, wheat, corn, and soybeans. Active yield was introduced in 2018 and works in all S700 model combines. With the 700 series of combines, John Deere redesigned our armrest controls. We also introduced the 4600 Gen 4 command center into the harvester line of products. The Gen 4 display uses a different user interface than the 2630 display did, and I'll show you this in a separate video. Also, we redesigned our armrest controls to be a bit more intuitive and more ergonomic. We also redesigned our hydro handle. As you can see it now, your hand wraps around it easier than it did in the past. A lot of the functions are the same, but we have added some extra ability to change things. We now have a turn dial at the bottom, as well as 4 buttons on the back and 1 button right here that can all be programmed to do whatever functionality you're looking for. On our main armrest, we have 4 more buttons over here that can also be custom programmed to whatever you like. Otherwise, we still have our main controls available to us at all times, including our lights, our HVAC system, our radio system, transmission, throttle, and our header controls, all convenient for yourself. We also have a spot where we can store our cell phone, which has spots on the bottom where you can run a cord to provide power to it at all times. In our armrest, we have USB outlets inside of here that we can plug that cord into, so that everything is nice and convenient for you as you go. We also have our Gen 4 extended display option for the first time in the combine. Another feature that was redesigned in these combines was the seat. A lot of care was put into making sure that these seats are comfortable to be sitting in for a long day of work. One of the features that they put in was the ability to have this swivel side to side, so that you can see on the large heads your corners a lot easier with less fatigue on the operator. A feature that was added late in the 600 series and continued into the 700 series is the foot pegs on the steering column, giving you a place so that you can get your feet up off the floor and be more comfortable as you're operating on those long days.